Okay, guys, before we even start with the video here on science, one, you will need your science notebook. So if you do not have your science notebook and you're from Miss Rocha's room, you need to make sure you have it before they start testing. If you are in my room, you need to have your science notebook out and paying attention. First of all, your behavior the last couple of days is not acceptable. Not acceptable. And you and I both know that if I was there right now, you would be in huge trouble. Your behavior is not acceptable. The sub has every right to go into Class Dojo and give you a negative for sub behavior, which is a negative 3 points, just so you know. So if you're not going to listen to the sub or you're going to give the sub a hard problem, they can give you a negative 3 dojos. Just saying. Your behavior with one another and getting your work done, unacceptable. And if this continues, the consequences will be dire when I get back. Just so you know. All of your work that was due last week, some of you haven't finished. It's in the grade book as unfinished, and it's a 0. So if you did not finish it by Sunday, when I went to put in grades, you took a 0 for it. So if you didn't finish all of those reading articles on Google Classroom, you do not have an opportunity to go back and redo them. You will not get any credit. You knew the rule from the beginning of the school year that if your work was not done and you knew you weren't going to get your work done on Friday, that you needed to take it home and do it. So it's not acceptable for you not to get your work done. Do I make myself clear? You know better. You know my expectations and Miss Rocha's expectations, and you're not meeting them. I'm very disappointed in this class. Both classes. So don't think it was just what made for one. For those that are getting your work done, perfect. Great. Because when you see this video, your grades will be done for the quarter. So when you go into your grade book, or at least for reading, and if you're in my class for science, and if your ELA will be done, your spelling will be done, all of it will be done. I have looked at grades as of Sunday night and put grades in. So therefore, those are your grades that are going in. So if you're not happy, it's because you didn't complete your work. Because it's really easy to get an A in my room as long as you complete your work. You don't complete your work, you don't get your A. Okay, moving on. There's your lecture. Don't make the sub, give another one. Okay, we are moving on to weather. How can weather change from day to day, and what factors cause these changes? So, the Earth's axis is really what causes us to have different seasons. Our rotation and our revolution is what causes for our different seasons. Okay, in summer. During summer, the sun's rays are the most direct and the temperature is the highest. In winter, during the winter, the sun's rays are the least direct and the temperature is the coolest. We are also, if you look at this picture down here, we're also the least amount away from the sun. So, of course, we're going to be expecting colder temperatures. In the season, spring and fall, you'll notice that we are over here and we're not in the direct sun path. So we are getting a little less sun. Plus, our axis also dictates how close we get to the sun. Okay, this has to go in your science notebook. Has to. Please make sure you put this in your science notebook. You need to know the difference between weather and climate. Weather is the condition of the atmosphere from day to day. So when we go onto the weather channel, we are checking what the temperature is going to be today. Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? Are we going to get a wind? That's weather. Day to day weather. However, climate is the average precipitation and temperature in an area over a long period of time. So, for example, if I were to look at the average temperature for Pennsylvania in October, the average temperature is about 50-some degrees, where North Carolina's average temperature might be 65, 70 degrees in October. The average precipitation also affects. If in October we get about a half an inch of rain, but in April we get 2 inches of rain, well, in the spring we do seem to get more rain. That's a climate. We're looking at the average precipitation. We're not looking at it snowed today, but it didn't snow tomorrow. It's going to snow tomorrow. That's weather. So looking at today's climate is weather, but looking at the average. So if I were to look at Syracuse, New York, the average temperature for Syracuse, New York for November, that's climate. If I want to pack to go to Jamaica in July, that's climate, because I don't know the day-to-day right now, but if I were to go pack or come up with an idea, I'm looking at its precipitation and I'm looking at temperature for that time frame. I can't predict what it's going to be in July in Jamaica, but the climate tells us the overall average. So please make sure you have the definition of weather and climate in. Wind. You also need the definition for wind right here. Wind is the movement of air pressure from areas of high pressure to low pressure. We always go from high pressure to low pressure. Now, if you look at it, high pressure is going to give you cool, clear skies. It's going to give you sunny days. Low pressure, on the other hand, is going to bring snow or rain or sleet or heavy clouds. That's what it's going to bring you. So you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at high pressure versus low pressure. Now you also notice that the high pressure is in blue and the low pressure is in red. And you would think it would be the opposite, but it's not. They like to mess with your heads. It's really what it is. So if the sub needs to pause me, she can, but you do need the definition of weather, climate, and wind. Wind is the change in pressure that are caused by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface. What's important is right here. High temperature equals low pressure. Low temperature equals high pressure. So what you need to write down is this. High temperature is low pressure. Think about it. The higher the temperature, the more unstable it's going to be. You might get a pop-up thunderstorm. So it's going to have low pressure. But the lower the temperature is more of a stable environment, unless it's like 30 degrees out. If it's between, 60 and or 70 even, depending on which city you live in, that might be a lower temperature. You're going to have more of a chance of having an even balanced of precipitation. So please make sure you have high temperature equals low pressure and low temperature equals high pressure. Okay, this is hugely important. This is EOG important. You need to know the difference between global and local winds. The big thing is this picture right here is important for you to have in your science notebook. You don't need to know all about this part over here, polar easterlies, subpolar lower. These aren't as important. Oops, I'm sorry, guys. These aren't as important. We're going to talk about this picture in a minute, but what I want you to really definitely write down is what's right here. Global winds are also known as the prevailing winds, are winds that blow across the entire planet. The global winds in North Carolina are the prevailing westerlies. These winds blow from west to east. So you will notice that we get all our weather from California. It comes across the Rockies, it comes across the Appalachians. It's coming from the west. We are getting our weather from the west. Now, these are called the prevailing westerlies. If you look right here, you're like, well, we're right about here. And that would be considered trade winds. Actually, we are not in the trade winds. This is the equator. We're not that close to the equator. Now, you would think the United States could be possibly between the westerlies and the trade winds. In some regards, yes, we kind of look like we are, but we are in the prevailing westerlies. So make sure you draw your arrows. If you'll notice at the top of the Arctic up here, your arrow is going from right to left. So it's moving this way. These are the polar easterlies. Of course, they're moving east, so that's why they're called polar easterlies. Now, if you look right here, right below it, you see the westerlies. These are called the prevailing westerlies. They are moving from the west to the east. So make sure you draw lines, and you can call them the westerlies here. Right below it, right here's the equator, splits the earth in half. You have the trade winds. These are the only ones that actually, if you'll notice, these move west-east, east-to-west, they go opposite. But the trade winds both move in the same direction. It is a bigger part of the earth in regards to the amount of longitude and latitude of which way it moves. But you'll also notice that the westerlies move this way and the trade winds move this way, which is why we have hurricanes that form, because the trade winds are pushing one way and the westerlies are pushing another way, and it's causing that rotation. That's another reason. Now, we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago when I was home or there, that you need warm water. That also has a place in effect. But the winds, the trade winds, are moving from right to left as the westerlies are moving left to right. So the direction, as you can see my hands moving, that's what's causing the spin of them. Okay. You also need to know that local winds are winds that blow over a short distance. Right here. Down here at the very bottom. Local winds are winds that blow in a short distance. Meaning, if I were to go stand at the beach and I were to go a little bit inland, but not completely on the beach, but I'm a mile in, those are local winds. Those winds are probably not the same 20, 30 miles over. They're local. Because you have to figure the buildings that kind of block the winds or tunnel the wind, depending on if you've ever been to New York City, and the wind that goes through the tall buildings is a local wind. Because if I were to stand out in the country, it might not necessarily be as strong because the buildings might be tunneling in the wind. Please make sure you have in your notebook global winds, local winds, and what we are the prevailing westerlies. Make sure you have this picture right here. You do not need the outsides, but you do need that these are the trade winds. We go back to the westerlies, and we go back to the easterlies. Please make sure you have this picture drawn in your notebook. Another important part is sea breeze. Sea breeze. So, sea breeze is during the day. The ocean water is cooler than land, which causes high pressure to form over the water. This causes the wind to blow from the ocean to the land. If you want, you may take out your colored pencils and draw this, but this is important. You need to have your lighthouse here. You need to have your land here. You need to have your ocean. You can even have the blue and the warm. You need to have the sun here, because when we go to talk about land breeze in the next the next slide, you need to understand that sea breeze happens during the day. So make sure you have that it's in there as day. So the sub can pause me at any time. But your temperature, of course, we always know that heat rises, so that the heat is rising, so the sun is rising, the temperature is rising, it's flowing out into the ocean where it cools down, sinks back down, and blows back in. So during the day, we are getting the breeze from the ocean, which is causing the rotation. It's going up and down. It's basically going from left to right in this picture. Now, what you need to know is sea breeze happens during the day. Please draw your picture. You can even draw your blue right here, and then it turns to red. This needs to be drawn in your picture. It also needs to be labeled sea breeze. You also need this definition. So you're probably going to need about 8 to 10 minutes to draw this. So if you would pause me, because I'm going to hit the next button. Okay, now land breeze is the opposite. Land breeze happens at night. The land is cooler than the ocean, which gives us high pressure to form over the land. This causes the wind to blow from the land to the ocean, which is why when you stand on the beach most nights, that it's cooler than if I were to go dip my feet out in the ocean. The water's still kind of warm. The land is giving off that coolness, and sending it out. Now you'll notice that the arrows move in the opposite direction. The arrows move in the opposite direction. They are really moving from right to left. You're getting the warm water off of the ocean. Think about it. The water is warmer, so it's getting that heat from the ocean, and it's blowing onto the land. You are getting more of a breeze at night in regards to coming from the ocean. So this is why the lighthouse was important, because it's also in your land breeze one. Please make sure that you have a moon drawn and not the sun. So you're probably also going to need another 8 to 10 minutes to draw land breeze. If at any time that it's time to move on to another lesson, you can stop me or you can keep playing. But please take a moment and record this in your notebook. If in your journal, your journal/your notebook, if you'll write what causes the seasons on Earth. We just discussed this. So if you will take a moment and write what causes the seasons on Earth. What you should have is the Earth is tilted on its axis, which causes the sun's rays to be the most direct in the summer and the least direct in the winter, and the middle during the spring and the fall. So if you do not have this written down, or it could be very similar, it doesn't have to be word for word, it could be very, very similar. But if you'll take a moment and make sure that if you do not have this answer correct, that you write it into your notebook. So if any time, please tell the Miss Garcia or our other sub that you need to pause. Also, in your notebook, what is the difference between weather and climate? I stress this highly. So take a moment and write, what is the difference between weather and climate? Pause me, please. Okay. Weather is the condition of the atmosphere over a short period of time. Climate is the average of precipitation and temperature over a long period of time. So weather is day to day. Is it going to rain tomorrow? Is it going to snow tomorrow? Is it going to be windy? The sun going to come up? That's weather. We go to the weather channel for day to day. However, on the weather channel, you can also get the climate, and I'm going to give you a website where you're going to actually go through that. And we're going to look at the difference between, we're going to record weather for each day and climate each day. So don't worry about that just yet, but we will be doing that. So if you do not have this answer in here, please take a minute and make sure that you have this. However, it should have already been in your notebook prior because you have written it down. What causes wind? Please take a moment in your journal and record what causes wind. Wind is caused when air moves from the areas of high pressure to low pressure. This change in air pressures are caused by uneven heating of the Earth's surface. So, air is moving from high pressure to low pressure. That's the biggest point. High pressure to low pressure. And it's caused by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface. The tilt of the axis doesn't hurt either. But if you do not have that it moves from high pressure to low pressure, record it. If you do not have that it is caused by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface, write it down because this is very important. What is the difference between global and local winds? We just talked about global and local winds. So if you'll take a moment and write down the difference between global and local winds. Global winds are winds that blow along the entire planet, where local winds are winds that blow over a short period of time. It kind of, in its own name, it kind of gives its aspect. Local means it's locally happening. Global means it's happening over the entire planet. Kind of, it does tell you in its names. If you do not have that, please make sure you have it. So we should have been able to answer, how does the tilt of the Earth affect seasons, and what major variables affect daily weather? Those are the questions we should have been able to answer. We will be talked about climate, weather, seasons. We will be talking about wind speed, wind direction, precipitation, temperature, tilt, and axis. So some of those vocabulary we've already taken notes on, some we will be taking notes on. Rotation versus revolution. So we're going to stop the video here right now. If you have more time, you can watch the next video in regards to science. If you do not, then the next video can be played the following day. But if you still have time in science, you can continue to play. However, I'm going to record a new video, so that way you have an opportunity tomorrow or the following day to watch the next video.